We talked about we would do if we were running things for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's talk about what we think they will do in this year's free agency period.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. Today, we're going to get into what the Bengals will do in free agency, and we'll probably get the players slightly wrong, but we have a pretty good idea of what their plan A is. Their plans can, of course, change. Nonetheless, we will talk about what we think their plan A is in this episode. We're also going to get into the comp pick stuff at the end of the episode, where perhaps by the time you're listening to this, there's been some adjudication from the NFL, but it may be that the NFL has screwed up their comp pick formula this year. We will find out. We'll break down what that could mean. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And James, let's start with what we think the Bengals are going to do in free agency. We have an idea.
Yeah, well, of course we do, right? We've spent weeks, months talking about it, thinking about it, and the Bengals, first things first, I do think they're going to be aggressive. I think Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow wherever you get your podcasts, because I have a feeling we're going to be doing a lot of bonus shows, not just our normal 5 a week. And we'll have nuggets and information and insight all throughout this free agency period, because they just have a lot of holes to fill, Jake. And I expect them to address defensive tackle and address right tackle and sign a tight end or multiple, address the weird safety market and take advantage of that by getting someone in that room, a veteran. And is that a 24-year-old? Is that a 32-year-old? I think that element is interesting at both defensive tackle and in mid-20s at least, and safety. But I expect the Bengals to be aggressive. I expect them to spend money. It's really a matter of who do they spend it on. I think a big priority, and probably their biggest priority, is in the tackle rooms at defensive tackle. I think they'll bring out an outside body in, at least one, and I expect them to sign a veteran right tackle that they think can start if need be.
Yeah, and it's challenging to find, and we've talked about this over the last week, where they're going to have a bigger contract hit. It's challenging to get through all of their cap space when you go through some of the players you expect them to sign for some of the contracts that are projected. And by the way, Brad Spielberger has been pretty on it for some of the bigger deals that have happened so far. And it looks like he's wrong at first, because the initial reports for contracts are like, yeah, Ezra Cleveland, 3 years, 30 million or whatever. And then it turns out it's 3 years, 24 million. And Brad got the guarantees correct to the dollar for Ezra Cleveland, for example. So that's happening. But when you look at his contract projections and the players we think the Bengals might go after, and you put all that into what it would cost the Bengals from a cap perspective, it's legitimately hard for me to find a way to spend all their money. And they'll maybe do some extensions that'll bite into that as well. Like maybe we'll see an Evan McPherson extension this offseason. Maybe we will see the Jamar Chase extension come a year earlier than it needs to come, where they can do a 5th-year option. They have 2 more years of control, but he's extension eligible the way they did with Burrow last year. And they're incentivized to do so, but Jamar Chase is incentivized to wait, by the way. But outside of some bigger money extensions for guys on the team, which could be what they're carving out money for, James, it's hard to figure out where they're spending money in free agency and where they're making a splash if we're excluding guys like Christian Wilkins and Chris Jones, which we more or less are.
Yeah, I agree. And so I don't want to completely exclude Wilkins. I think it's
we made that mistake last year, right?
0.03%. I think it's very low. There's a chance. And it's the Jim Carrey. So you telling me there's a chance. And so never say never, because we know he's hitting the market. And so if he's hitting the market, could they go that route? Yeah, they could. And yet I look at this defensive line arena, and to me, I think they want to keep DJ Reader. I think that keeping him doesn't satisfy my question marks about that defensive tackle room, because I just don't know what he's going to be post-injury. I get there aren't many concerns. Like, it just feels like everyone thinks he's going to bounce back again and be fine, and he very well could be. Can the Bengals bank on that? I don't think that they're as high on this draft class of defensive tackle as some. And so this idea that they're taking a defensive tackle at 18 and that's how they sub, I don't think that's super realistic either. And so I want to see a lot of the money go towards defensive tackle. And if it's not Christian Wilkins, to your point, are they going Tier Tart plus Sheldon Rankins plus DJ Reader? I don't think they do that either, even though that's kind of what I would do. Is I would be prioritizing it to that level and getting multiple bodies in that mid-tier, not just one and not just Reader in a piece. That's what I would do. To me, I think they try to bring back Reader and then add one. And I'm going to be here 2-3 weeks from now, like, all right, well, that's probably not enough, even if you do add a defensive tackle in the draft.
But what do we think they're going to do? So say they're prioritizing DJ Reader. They really would like him back. Say we take them at their word for what they said at the combine, where they're trying to find a way to bring him back. They find a way to bring Reader back. They presumably know more about his injury and recovery than we do. He's been in the building every day, as Lou Anarumo pointed out, at the combine doing his rehab, which will stop perhaps by the time you listen to this episode. When the new league year, well, probably not by the time you've listened to this episode, but when the new league year hits and his contract officially expires.
He can, I think technically, because legal tampering isn't the new league year.
Yeah.
I think Monday he could be working out there.
Yes.
And so, you know how awkward that would be if it's like, hey, the insert whatever team is willing to offer you this. All right, let's go there. And he's like, all right, let me finish up working out. I don't know if he'll be there on Monday.
Yeah, you probably stay home from school that day and do your negotiations.
But I wonder, right?
So if we're talking about defensive tackle, they're 100% signing a nose tackle. Is that DJ Reader? Is that Grover Stewart? Is that Tier Tart? Is that a lower dollar player like Raekwon Davis, Ashawn Robinson, Poona Ford, going down the list, right? That's what we need to determine. I think their plan A is DJ Reader. I think their plan B is Tier Tart. And perhaps both of those things are actually plan A, but I think that they probably only want to spend big money on one nose tackle, and then you need a Josh Chupo replacement. And that's where you start to talk about some of those lower dollar guys like the Poona Fords of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of where they're starting. And I think you're also looking for a depth piece at 3-tech. And that's where I really wonder how much money they'll spend. If it is just the $2 million Maurice Hurst flyer, or if it's something a little bit more substantial. I know that Javon Kinlaw has been talked about quite a bit with all the potential he had coming out of the draft. Or if they go for the veteran, the solid piece that we talked about in our What Will We Do, the Shelby Harris. Still hard to project them doing the 1-year deals for the 30-plus-year-olds because they haven't done it. But if I were handicapping it, I would think DJ Reader's plan A, Tier Tart's plan B, and also in addition to that, they're looking for a 3-tech rotational piece.
Yeah, I agree. And they need to. They have to find something there. And Kinlaw fits the age profile. But is that... do they think he can produce at that level? I do wonder that. I'm just looking here. Maybe it is Maurice Hurst. You know, maybe they go, because to me, he's the guy that could actually make the impact that you're looking for. I will say this. It feels like they're going to address it thinking that DJ Reader is going to be ready to go early in 2024, early in the season. And I think that scares me a little, because I just don't know. And I don't think they know. And they're banking, and there would be a little blind faith there. But what do I expect them to do? I think they will sign Reader, and maybe you're right, miss out on a Tart level guy. And then I think they'll get in on one of these guys. You know, is it Rankins? Could they go Reader Rankins?
I think that's $35 million on that's starter level money for 3 defensive tackles. I don't think the Bengals do it. I mean, we've talked about this. I don't think the Bengals like to pay starter level money for rotational pieces. They haven't done it. We'll see.
And that's the dilemma, because I would be willing to in this class. It doesn't feel like it. You're right. And so where do they spend it? Let's continue. So we think they're going to address defensive tackle, maybe not to the level that some expect. We will continue the what would they do portion of the program coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From LED headlights, roof racks, exhaust kits, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has it. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all of the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. I really wish eBay Motors had defensive tackles with guaranteed fits, because that's where the Bengals would go. It's where you should go. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
One other name on the defensive tackle list that we haven't talked about, Neville Gallimore. If you're talking about the cheap rotational 3-tech Titans, fits the age profile. 27. But let's talk tackle. We've talked defensive tackle to death. We think nose tackle for sure. I think DJ Reader's plan A. Grover Stewart might be one of their plans if it's like a 2-year deal, but just because of the age,
I like
have a hard
Grover.
time seeing it.
I like Grover Stewart. I do. And you're right. The age, that's what's really tough. And I've seen some of the YouTube comments. We're basing it. We're not ageist against 30-year-olds. The Bengals just haven't targeted those guys in free agency.
They've been actively averse to it. They don't do it.
They might have to at defensive tackle.
They might have to this year.
They might.
Yeah, because like the class on the whole, the texture of the free agency class on the whole is a little bit older and not very top heavy. And so, like previous years where they've signed a bunch of our tier 3 guys, and our free agency list is out there. You've got it on allbengals.com. We've tweeted it. We sent it out to our Locked On Bengals insiders one day early. Join subtext.com/LockedOnBengals if you want to join that crew. But they've gone for these tier 3 guys, these mid-level money guys, and they've been really, really good there. They've been one of the best teams in free agency in recent years. So they need to get back to that this year and find those guys that we're not anticipating being big difference makers and be smarter than us again.
Let me run a scenario by you. If they sign Tier Tart, would you be okay with Tart and Stewart, even though they're both kind of in the same realm with BJ Hill? Like, you think that fits?
Would I be okay, or do I think the Bengals would do that?
I know this is what would they do, but let's say Reader signs elsewhere. They already have Tart under contract, and then they pivot to Stewart, and we're talking about those 3. And then who knows at that 3-tech role, I think you still could go get a Hurst for low end money. But how would you feel about that trio?
I think that it's solid. Like you don't have a donkey, to use the Paul Dehner terminology there, like the no donkeys theory on the interior defensive line. You could go that way.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think that's got to be their mindset, especially if the big dog, DJ, gets away. And there is a chance he gets away. There's a chance they re-sign him. I think they want him. I think we've seen it work out before, and we've seen it not work out before. So we'll see. Their right tackle is going to be an outside hire. That is Mr. Outside Hire. And who will it be? This screams to me, Jake, Mekhi Becton. I think what will they do? I think they may target him. He may be the guy because he's almost 25. He's mid-20s, going into his prime. Frank Pollock, I assume, believes in him since he was there with the Jets when they picked him 11th overall. And I think Becton will look at it as, all right, I can go start there, and I can go build my NFL resume a bit with a guy that believed in me 4 years ago. So to me, I think they signed Mekhi Becton. I know we've talked about Illuminor and Onwenu and Trent Brown. I think Becton is high on their list, and that's who I think they end up with.
That's the one that seems to make a lot of sense. If they don't go that route, they don't go for one of those top end guys, because I wouldn't rule out Trent Brown. I wouldn't rule out Mekhi Becton. I think Mekhi Becton is threading the needle of some of the things they've talked about. You know, the guy to rebuild his career, young, ascending, pedigree, familiarity with the offensive line coach. But maybe they look at their history and they say, you know what, we've tried stuff like that before, and we want somebody who has shown that he can do it for a longer period of time. I do agree with you that I think Becton, if we had to pick a name out of a hat, is the name that we would pick.
Mhm.
I don't know why there's not more thought about, like, what's the difference if you're looking for a 1-year bridge option to your pick at 18, which seems like a very likely potential plan A, between Becton for a year with his injury history and the level of play he showed last year, and a guy like
Mhm.
Cam Fleming, who is very unexciting, but has been a good pass protector in the league for a long time. And if you're doing a 1-year bridge option, how different is Cam Fleming from Riley Reif? I mean, there's a difference. Riley Reif had a much higher peak, but at the point
Mhm.
in the career where you got Riley Reif, I mean, if you're upset that they missed out on Chukwuma Okorafor, who went to New England, you know, I see those guys as pretty similar pass protectors. And you could
Mhm.
look at other athletic younger guys coming off their first deals, a Josh Nijman from Green Bay as well. But it's really hard to find a right tackle that checks all the boxes, which is why we keep coming back to these short-term solutions.
Yeah, I was surprised they weren't in on Okorafor. The moment he got released, I thought, oh, well, you could just try to get him and do, because the Patriots have the need there. And now it just it clears them to potentially address it with their 35th pick or whatever they have in the draft. And it just gives them somebody, right, as they lose Trent Brown and potentially Mike Nwenu too. So yeah, I was surprised there. There aren't a ton of options. And I think they'll look at the age, the profile of Becton, and that will sway them. To your point, if it's just 1 year anyway, I why? And I think their answer would be, well, there's potential with Becton, and who knows, maybe he is good, and then maybe he does become part of the long-term solution. I think that's a small percentage, but I do think it's why he would have the edge over a Cam Fleming, where it's guaranteed it would be a one and done type scenario like Riley Reif, which I think everyone knew going into it. It's a bit different with Becton if he does play well next year, say for them at right tackle.
I just want to really quickly check before we move on to where Becton has played lately. So he did play a
Left.
little bit at right tackle to start
Yeah.
the year in 2023, but then was a left tackle. And then you go back to his rookie year, I think he was a left tackle all year. So he did play 2 games at right tackle in the NFL. And
Mhm.
one of those was against Dallas. One of them was against Buffalo early in the year. At least he's done it.
Mhm.
So there's that. Uh, Yeah, I really don't mind the upside swing there either. It's just that's because the free agency group at right tackle doesn't offer terribly compelling solutions, and you're probably setting up to pick a guy in the draft, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really with any of these guys, even if they sign Mike Nwenu, I'd feel that way, where
Yeah.
you do it and it's not preventing you. Now they might say it would prevent, but it's not preventing you. You do not want to prevent yourself from being able to take a tackle and feel great about it at pick 18.
That is a good point. The money thing does not lie with the Bengals. If they're paying a guy starter level money, he's going to start for them. Probably at the position they signed him to start. Look at Ted
Yep.
Karras. We talk about, oh, they can move Ted Karras to guard he's going to start at center for them next year.
Man, I'm just glad. I'm not glad he ended up with the Ravens, but I was in on Linderbaum that year. We shouted from the mountaintops. They weren't. I'm just glad they couldn't pass on him, because if they would have
No.
passed on him, I'd have been like, oh no,
Yeah.
because he's obviously really good. Let's get to all of the other positions. We spent a lot of time on trenches. Look, it's a
Appropriately.
trench focused free agency period for the Bengals. We expect them to be in and examining it. And as of now, we'll see. But let's get to safety and running back and all of these other positions that we need to get to. And we'll speed things up a bit coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Yes, it is tournament time. And, well, unfortunately, my Bearcats are going to be on the outside looking in, I'm afraid. But whether you're betting on a big upset or on a #1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So throw $5 on insert whatever team in the NBA. You want to get that ahead of the tournament. Maybe you want to throw $5 on my Bearcats to make a run. Good luck. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all with FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $200 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets.
We got to hit tight end. We got to hit safety. We got to hit running back.
Let's go. Let's start with tight end. We can speed this up. We know what they're going to do. Let's go.
Tight
what do you
end.
think they're going to do?
They're going to sign Hayden Hurst for
Correct.
the league minimum because he's getting paid by the Panthers in 2024, and he will be free virtually for the Bengals this year. They're going to bring back Drew Sample. They're going to bring back Tanner Hudson unless he gets a better offer than they're willing to pay. I don't think they're willing to pay any of those guys very much. They're going to go cheap at the position again. I don't think they're in on Noah Fant, who's now at the top, the very top of the market, with Hunter Henry and Dalton Schultz signing deals before free agency hits. Maybe they kick the tires on one of the lower end guys like Colby Parkinson, Adam Troutman. Maybe they talk to Mike Gesicki as well. They've passed on that opportunity the last few years when maybe the price tag is more appealing to them this year, but there is a pretty clear path at tight end.
Hayden Hurst. I agree with you on Colby Parkinson. I think they could be in on him. Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample. That's what I expect. Again, I never expected them to break the bank for Noah Fant anyways. And now that I expect him to get 10 plus million per year because he's really the only guy. So I think his projection is going to go up, and it's not a great class. I agree with you on tight end. Safety is interesting because safety is something we've talked a ton about. I would be in on Jordan Poyer for like $2 million. I would try to steal him. And yet I think they're going to go bigger than that and find someone in that six that we've talked about it. And it frustrates me, but I just think it's going to happen. That $6 to $9 million range is the number you've thrown out to me, like when we messaged. And I feel like that's accurate. I think that they're going to be in there. Will that be enough to get a Xavier McKinney? Probably not. But I think you could get a tier below that in a quality safety that they like. And I don't love it, but I think that's what they're going to do.
And the NFL is going cheap at safety. Safety, very much so at this point, seems to be the running back of the defensive position where the market just isn't there. Although the market at positions that aren't tackles, quarterbacks, or wide receivers in the NFL is also just not exploding the way those positions are. But you start to get to the Geno Stone, Jordan Whitehead, Deshaun
I think
Elliott,
that's who it is. Geno Stone. I'll say.
Darnell
I think
Savage,
that's who they
group
get.
of guys. Sure. I think that maybe that's plan A, right? And then one of those other guys could be plan B. Geno Stone, a guy they're familiar with, a guy that does the free safety things they want, a guy that played in a complicated defense, the Mike McDonald defense, which we talked about. You need to be a pretty smart player to play in that defense the way that they disguise. They also will have competition from Mike McDonald, who has no safeties in Seattle, for Geno Stone's services. Geno Stone playing 1,000 snaps for the Ravens last year. So one of those guys, start with Geno Stone. Sounds good to me. And then we can talk running back. But there are a lot of options at safety. They're going to sign a starting free safety to starting level money. They'll probably cut Nick Scott as soon as that deal is done. And then we can talk about running back.
Yeah, I agree with you. Running back is interesting. I think they get cheaper there as well. I don't know exactly who they like. I think Zach Moss makes sense. But I just think the Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing, I've been on it, and maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe they're not in. I think that's someone that they could target and sign really, really cheap and open up their draft board, and it would be enough to get cheaper in that room and save money and use that elsewhere. So that would be a guy to mention, but I do think Zach Moss makes a ton of sense. But they also could like steal a DeAndre Swift or someone of that tier because it's such a flooded market. It would not shock me at all if they're able to stumble in kind of like safety to someone like that.
Yeah, I think they're trying to get cheaper at running back is going to be the biggest thing. I do expect that they will move on from Joe Mixon. I wouldn't say that's in stone. I think the family might want to keep Mixon around, but they want to get cheaper at the position. Mixon, I think, to his credit, does want to stay in Cincinnati, but they've got that $3 million roster bonus to negotiate. Gus Edwards and Zach Moss are pretty similar tiers of player to me, and both are projected to get the same 2-year, $3.75 million a year kind of contract. Dante Foreman, Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, some other names. So if they wanted to double dip and go like Zach Moss, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and those guys combined to cost probably a little bit less than Mixon, you can see it. And then they might draft a guy too. Or maybe they go one, draft a guy, and then bring somebody else in later.
If their goal is to get cheaper, I don't know why they wouldn't just go chase Clyde and then draft.
I think they want somebody with experience. Like that Gus Edwards, Zach Moss kind of player too.
Sure. And we'll see there. I do wonder if those projections are too high. I really do. Because there's just so many guys.
Last year, right? Like it's weird.
It is weird. Because I get it. I also think Samaje would be lost in this year's class because there's so many. And also it maybe just means that tier doesn't get impacted, but the high tier just comes down some. That could be what it is too from a crunching standpoint. Do you think, I'm trying to think here, cornerback, you've been in on corner a little bit. Yeah. Do you think they had a veteran?
I think so. I think a $3 million or so corner. That's the Christian Fultons, Dane Jacksons, Amik Robertsons of the world, Rock Ya-Sin, like that tier of corner. One of those guys. I don't have a name. I don't have a specific target there. Fulton is the guy that I keep coming back to. He's actually a second round pick, not a first round pick like I thought he was. But
Cheeto.
What about Cheeto?
I think he comes back.
Okay.
Cheap. I don't think he's going to have a big market. I really don't.
The way he has a big market is at the top of this cornerback free agency group is just non-existent.
And I don't think is that, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a team that says, let's go get him. But I would be a bit surprised. Have we hit on all of them?
Are there any dark horse positions that you think we could be like, where are they going to surprise us? I don't think they're signing a wide receiver.
Harrison Butker. I'm serious.
Would be a surprise.
I think that there is I don't think it's out of the realm. We've talked about this.
Kicker?
A punter.
You said Butker.
Oh no, sorry. Jeez, Pete. I did say Butker. Sorry. Wrong Kansas City. Good Lord. Okay. Why would I say Butker?
Tommy Townsend.
All right.
Okay.
My bad. Sorry.
We got that straight.
Money Mac. You got your Money Mac nickname from this pod. All right. So I'm sorry. I did not mean that. No, I think Tommy Townsend. I think we've talked about where are they going to spend their money. It would not shock me if they look up and they're like, can we just solve this and be done?
If anything, it would be an extension for McPherson. It would be the kicker move.
The kicker. Well, yeah. Sorry. But that would be surprising to me.
It would.
But it would not shock me.
But maybe that's where they spend money because we can't find a place for them to spend this money.
That's right.
Maybe they're like, hey, we have money.
Tommy Townsend. Let's put him down. What will they do? We'll put Tommy Townsend down. I will say this.
Simmons likes him.
The door wasn't shut on it at the combine.
Yeah.
So if it's not shut on punter, there's at least a chance. And he held for Evan McPherson at Florida. So there's that.
There you go.
Ooh.
Let's talk about this compensatory pick stuff real quick before we get out of here.
Real quick.
After
so we have
summarize what we think they will do.
Yeah, we have them signing Geno Stone or someone of that level, bringing back DJ Reader, signing T.R. Tart, Hayden Hurst, Mekhi Becton, a Zach Moss level running back, moving on from Joe Mixon, and signing Tommy Townsend, and moving on from Mixon is not in stone. We also have them moving on from Nick Scott as well.
Mm-hmm. And
Did I miss anything?
I don't think Tyler Boyd is back. I don't think they have extended an offer. I think he will go elsewhere in free agency, and that has run its course in Cincinnati.
Yep.
We've known feeling about Tyler Boyd. So quickly on the compensatory pick subject, the Cincinnati Bengals were awarded 2 sixth-round compensatory picks by the NFL Management Council, who manages all of the comp pick stuff every year. And that was a bit of a surprise. We were expecting a 5th for Von Bell and a 6th, I believe, for Samaje Perine or whatever other free agent that would. There were a couple of 6th-round guys that could have been the 6th-round pick. Instead, they get 2 6s, but Nick Cordy of overthecap.com, who tracks the compensatory projections every year with a now public formula, by the way. This is not the black box it once was. The new CBA publicized this formula. We know exactly how it works. And he thinks that there might have been a mistake. And the reason that there might have been a mistake is the way that they figure out where the cutoffs are for each round is based on the percent of value compared to the rest of the NFL. And the top 5% of the NFL in their formula, which is money, playtime, honors. We'll give you some bonus points for playtime and honors, kind of tiebreakers. You get a list of 1,800 or so players that go into the list. And according to that list, there are some teams that maybe should have gotten more than they did. And the reason for that is that for whatever reason this year, there were only 64 players in the pool, or 62 players in the pool that would have qualified for third round picks.
Mhm.
And you look at previous years, and the lowest number of players that it's been to qualify for a third round pick in the last 10 years is 95. This year it's 62. It's typically 95 to 105, in that range, right around 100 players. This year, for some reason, it was only 62, which leads us all to think, after Nick Cordy's analysis, and he points this out for the first time, that something looks weird. Something is off this year. Probably primarily affects the 49ers and the Bills for Tremaine Edmonds and Mike McGlinchey, but also could impact the Bengals, where Jesse Bates is player number 63. And if the cutoff is at 62, well, that's just bad luck for the Bengals. However, it's not quite so simple, because like I said, usually there's 95 or more players in that top group, that third round group. Orlando Brown will be 91. So it's possible that both Orlando Brown and Jesse Bates would be third rounders, still canceling each other out. It's also possible that there's fewer players than ever in that third round cutoff, and that Jesse Bates is a third rounder and Orlando Brown will remain a fourth rounder in the formula. And the Bengals should have a third round comp pick. We'll see if there are appeals made, but it does look like there's a potential error this year, because that third round cutoff at 62 is a massive outlier compared to the last 10 years. Doesn't make any sense at all. And I think there's a slim but not non-existent chance that the Bengals are actually owed a third round comp pick.
Give me the third rounder. You know what that could be? That could be the running back everyone was talking about. That could be the defensive tackle that we've talked about. Oh, that could be so many different things. That could be the interior lineman, Christian Haynes. Come on down. Oh my God. I'll take the third rounder, baby.
Would be great.
There you go. There's my celebration.
It would be a game changer, honestly. And by the time you listen to this, the NFL might have said something about it. That's why we threw it at the end of the episode. Hopefully that explanation made sense. I've tweeted about it as well. If you want to read the explanation, I've got a bunch of tweets on the topic that you can go check out on Twitter. But that's it. We'll be back when the Bengals make a move or don't make a move. We'll talk about what's going on in day one of, let's just call it free agency. I know it's not the new league year, but it's legal tampering period is a mouthful. It starts for our
I don't
next
know why
episode.
they don't start it on the 11th. Who cares? Just make it free agency then. It doesn't matter.
Because reasons.
I
don't
know.
know. Anyway, the next time you hear from us, we'll be either recapping what the Bengals have done to start the free agency period, or what they haven't done, and what players have left the field and are no longer available for the Bengals to pick from. Hopefully we're talking about some moves. We will have you covered here on Locked On Bengals as quickly as possible for each of those moves. Until next time, Bengals fans, enjoy the last bit of calm before free agency. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.